still the work of Brunelleschi, still inside of the city of Florence, just down the road a wee bit, at Ospedale degli Innocenti. The Ospedale degli Innocenti is known in English as the Foundling Hospital, the hospital of found children. In other words, it was an orphanage. What is perhaps most noticeable is that series of rounded arches. Rounded arches, as I have typed out for you on your word list, come straight out of the Romanesque period. The Romanesque period is part of the larger medieval period. For those of you who haven't had the opportunity or the need to take Art 361, generally speaking, the medieval period is kind of like an umbrella. And underneath that umbrella, you have the Romanesque and the Gothic. So Romanesque and Gothic are both part of the medieval period. Well, during the Romanesque, that was the grand period of the beautiful use of the rounded arch. So Brunelleschi is using the rounded arch, which is very similar to what you see in Romanesque architecture, but it was also heavily used during the ancient Roman period. So he is bringing back, in essence, the rebirth of ancient architecture here. All parts of this structure are very clear, very delineated. You have these simple rounded arches and this fantastic emphasis on the horizontal. You see that big, thick, horizontal piece that sits on top of the rounded arches? Looks like it has some lines carved on it. That is called the entablature. That big, thick, horizontal element is called the entablature. That's something else that comes out of ancient Rome, and ancient Greece for that matter. You also have these beautiful, slender columns that are supporting the rounded arch. Here's a detail. You can see that the columns have this decoration on top. The decoration on top of any column is called the column capital. And I have posted for you on your website the different styles or orders of column capitals. The use of these column capitals goes all the way back to the days of ancient Greece and ancient Rome. The ones that we have here are known as Corinthian column capitals. They are the Corinthian order, which means that they have little curlicues, scrolls, and plant leaves, acanthus leaves. When you have an opportunity to look at the diagram I posted for you, it'll make much more sense. Well, these columns and column capitals support these really simply beautiful rounded arches. Directly above that, you see that big old whopper of a horizontal? That's the entablature. Brunelleschi was very precise in all of his measurements. For example, the height of each column is equal to the depth of each bay. Now you're like, what is a bay in architecture? A bay is each one of those little spaces you could walk into if you passed through or underneath that arch. So if you ran straight ahead and you passed underneath that arch, you would be standing in a space called a bay. He is obsessed with mathematical ratio. He had to be to reinvent one-point perspective, right? So everything he plans architecturally is exact, is perfectly planned, perfectly measured. If you look at the windows here, you'll notice those little triangular sections. Those are called pediments. Pediments come from ancient Greek temple architecture. The ancient Romans used them as well. The Romans borrowed it from the Greeks. So there is a lot of classicism that is being revived here. Not only do we have a lot of Greek influence, ancient Greek influence, in terms of the pediment and in terms of, well, the horizontal entablature comes straight out of ancient Greece also. We also get a lot of Roman influence because, let's face it, the Romans copied the Greeks. Well, I have an example here on the far right of what is called a triumphal arch. In the days of ancient Rome, they were everywhere. The Roman emperors used to like to process through them. So if you look at the triumphal arch, you'll see it has an arch, a rounded arch in the center. On the far right and far left are columns. Well, these columns are what are called engaged. They are engaged columns. They are engaged to the wall. An engaged column is simply a column, or a pilaster for that matter, that has been like split in half and glued to a wall. Think of it that way. Split in half, glued to a wall, that means it is engaged. So these are engaged columns. You even have a little pediment shape up above the arch. What I want you to do is compare that ancient Roman triumphal arch on the right with the flanking bays that we see on the left. What I mean by flanking bays are the bays on the far left and the bay on the far right, the ones at either end. To tell you the truth, it'd help you more if you looked at the one on the left, because if you look at the one on the right, right behind the horse's butt sculpture right there, it's been filled in and it's now an office. So it kind of confuses you. So look at the far left bay, and you will see that Brunelleschi has obviously studied all of the ancient Roman triumphal arches that were all over Italy. He has borrowed that ancient Roman triumphal arch and he has applied it to the flanking bays. You know, each column capital has its different order, its different style. I've told you that already. But also keep in mind that people use the word column or pilaster sort of interchangeably. I'm not a real stickler about that kind of thing. As long as you get the basic idea that it's holding something up, that's usually good enough for me. Columns or pilasters, whatever you want to call them, have a base that they stand upon. They have a base. And then at the very bottom, and then at the very top, they have the column capital, right? Well, that long section in between, what you refer to as the column usually, is really known as the shaft. And that shaft will sometimes have these really small channels, semicircular channels carved into them. If you look at the slide on the right, and you look at those engaged columns, you can see that there's shadow, that there are like these lines, these vertical lines running up and down the column shafts. That's what I'm talking about. It's called fluting, like the flute, an instrument you might play, but this is called fluting. You can have fluted columns or unfluted columns.